They say hell is a place of fire and eternal screams. But what if it's colder than we ever imagined? What if hell isn't beneath our feet, but behind our eyes? In our memories, our regrets, our fears. Tonight, we open a door. Not a religious sermon, not a bedtime myth, but a journey into the many hells that humanity has built, imagined, and endured. And more importantly, how to survive them. If you're brave enough to look into the abyss, don't blink, because it's already staring back. Long before scripture, before commandments or judgment, there was fear. Not of beasts, not of death, but of what comes after. When the body grows cold and the soul, if it exists, has nowhere left to run. The earliest humans buried their dead with weapons, food, and trinkets, not because they feared the grave, but because, deep down, they suspected that the journey wasn't over. They named this unknown place in whispers: Kur, Irkalla, Duat, Sheol, Hades, a place no living thing could enter and return unchanged. Not heaven, not peace, something else. In Mesopotamian belief, Irkalla was the land of no return. 7 gates stood between life and eternal dust. Even the gods feared to enter. Once inside, your name faded, your memories unraveled. You became nothing. In Egypt, the Duat was a labyrinth of trials. To survive, a soul needed passwords, spells, and a pure heart. Even then, the risks were endless. Serpents that devoured light, fire lakes, judges with the power to erase your existence forever. The Greeks imagined a kingdom beneath the earth. Hades. Here, the dead wandered like shadows. The wicked were punished in Tartarus, a deep pit beneath the pit. And those who defied the gods paid eternally. Tantalus, forever thirsty beside a pool he could never drink. Sisyphus, cursed to push his boulder only to fail. Again and again. These weren't just cautionary tales. They were instructions, warnings carved into myth. Hell was more than a punishment. It was a system, a reflection, a mirror held up to the soul. Because hell is never just about torment. It's about meaning. And in every age, humans have tried to answer the same question: what do we deserve? In medieval Europe, the Christian hell grew vast and terrifying, a place of eternal fire and devouring demons. Priests described it with exacting detail. The types of sin matched with the types of torture. Gluttons boiled in pitch, the proud were broken on wheels, the greedy were torn apart by beasts of gold. Why such imagination? Why such horror? Because fear is power. A terrified soul obeys. A terrified population confesses. And a terrified mind can be shaped like clay. But hell is not exclusive to any one faith or tradition. In Hinduism and Buddhism, the narakas are lower realms of suffering. Frozen plains, blazing pits, hells of knives and thorns, of silence and sorrow. But they are not eternal. They are cycles. Punishments, yes, but also lessons. In Aztec belief, Mictlan was the final destination for most souls. Not a reward or a punishment, but a challenge. 9 layers of hardship. Wind that tore the flesh, mountains that crashed together, rivers of blood. To reach peace, the soul had to endure. So here's the first rule of surviving hell. Know where you are. Know what kind of hell you're in. Because not all torments look like flames. Some look like silence. Some like routine. Some like a smile that doesn't reach the eyes. And here's the second rule. Movement is survival. Orpheus descended into the underworld for love. His music charmed even the dead. He found her. He walked out. He almost made it. Persephone rises from hell each year, and the earth blooms. Sisyphus suffers, yeah. But he does not stop. And in that refusal there is rebellion. There is strength. Hell hates movement. It wants stillness. It wants surrender. To move is to hope, to resist, to adapt. What if hell is real but not in the way we think? What if it's a hospital room with no end? A betrayal that rewires your brain? An addiction that owns your every waking moment? What if it's a childhood you never escaped? A scream you couldn't stop? A truth no one believed? We all carry pieces of hell inside us. Memories we bury. Shames we never speak of. Fears we pretend not to feel. And yet, here you are. Still breathing, still fighting, still watching. That alone makes you dangerous to the dark. Because if you've walked through hell once, you've learned something most never will. That survival isn't about escape. It's about endurance. This isn't about myths anymore. This is about you. About what you've faced, what you carry, and what still waits in the shadows of your mind. So welcome to hell. Not the one from the paintings, not the one in children's stories, the real one. And over the next chapters, we'll learn its language, its symbols, its rules. We'll visit every level, meet every tormentor, understand every lie. Because the final rule of surviving hell is to name it. And once you can name it, it loses its power. Hell is never just one place. It wears masks. It changes form. And through every age, every language, every sacred book, it returns. More vivid, more terrifying, and somehow more personal. The idea of hell is not confined to one culture, one religion, or one corner of the world. It is universal. Which begs the question, why does humanity, across time and geography, keep inventing hell? In Christianity, hell is a realm of fire, ruled not by God, but by absence. It is separation, a place where the soul is cut off from grace. And yet, over centuries, it has become vividly imagined. A theater of punishment. Dante's Inferno gave us 9 circles, each one worse than the last, each one tailored to the sin that placed you there. From the lustful, thrown by eternal winds, to the traitors, frozen in the ice of Satan's own breath. Dante didn't just describe hell. He mapped it, and he made one thing clear. In hell, justice is brutal but precise. Every punishment is symbolic. The greedy push boulders in opposite directions. The wrathful drown in the river of their own rage. Even in damnation, meaning remains. But Dante was not the first, nor the last. In Islam, hell is called Jahannam. It has 7 gates. Each gate, a level. Each level, a domain for a specific kind of transgression. The flames of Jahannam are said to be black, not red. The fire burns not only skin, but the very soul. And the pain renews, again and again, without relief. But hell in Islam is not simply torture. It is also warning, a mercy through fear, a deterrent. And in some interpretations, even the damned may one day be forgiven. Hell becomes part of a divine balance. A justice system more terrifying than any court, but also more perfect. In Hindu cosmology, there are many hells, narakas, each one tailored not by sin, but by karma. Here too, punishments are symbolic. Liars may have molten lead poured down their throats. Those who kill animals may be trampled by wild beasts for eons. But these are not eternal places. When the karma is burned away, the soul is released. It may reincarnate. It may rise. In this system, even hell is temporary. A spiritual cleansing, not a sentence, but a stage. Buddhism, too, speaks of naraka, some hot, some cold, some filled with rivers of pus, others with plains of ice. But what sets these hells apart is their origin. They are not created by gods. They are created by the mind, by the self. Suffering is not imposed from above. It is the result of ignorance, craving, and delusion. In this view, hell is not a punishment. but a mirror of our attachments. A concept both horrifying and liberating. Across the ocean, the ancient Aztecs spoke of Mictlan. Not a hell of sin, but a place all must pass through. 9 levels, each one a test. Jaguar spirits, mountains that collapse without warning, obsidian winds. The soul must wander for 4 long years before reaching peace. There is no judgment in Mictlan, only endurance. Even the innocent must suffer. And in that, perhaps, lies one of the oldest truths, that suffering in itself may be the price of transcendence. In Norse mythology, the dead may find themselves in Helheim, ruled not by fire but by frost, the land of the forgotten, the unremarkable, those who die not in glory, but in illness or old age. There is no fire here, only silence, Icar's stillness, a cold that seeps into memory. Even in Japan, hell is known, Jigoku, ruled by the great king Enma. Here too there are multiple layers. Some burn, others freeze. Spiritual detectives uncover sins after death, and judgment is passed. Each punishment fits the action, down to the smallest lie. So what do all these visions have in common? Hell is always tailored, always earned, always felt. Whether eternal or temporary, burning or freezing, chaotic or orderly, hell is not about the destruction of the body. It is about the breaking of the soul. And yet, even in these nightmares, there is a pattern, a faint, flickering path through the darkness. Every hell has levels. Every hell has an entrance. And, sometimes, an exit. Why do so many of these myths include trials? Why are the punishments precise? Why do even the damned sometimes climb? Because hidden within every vision of hell is a lesson, a mirror of society's values, a warning for the living, a blueprint of the world we feared or already knew. In some ways, the idea of hell is less about fire and more about order, a final justice system, a cosmic scale, a place where the wicked no longer escape. And that gives us comfort. Because what is more terrifying than punishment? The idea that no one pays, that there is no meaning, that pain is random. So humanity invented hell not just to terrify, but to make sense of things. To believe that every act matters, that someone, somewhere, is keeping score. But here's the twist. If hell reflects our deepest fears, then it also reveals our deepest hopes. Hope that the world is fair. Hope that wrongs will be righted. Hope that suffering can mean something. Hell, then, is not the opposite of hope. It is built on it. Because if we didn't believe in meaning, we wouldn't fear losing it. So here's your next rule for surviving hell. Look deeper. What are you being shown? What is being reflected back to you? Because if you know what your hell wants to teach you, you might just find the key to leaving it behind. In the next chapter, we'll leave myth behind and descend into real-world gates of hell. Places on earth that once promised no return, not legends, not metaphors, but locations people feared, fled, and sometimes entered willingly. And what they found there changed everything. If hell exists, then somewhere there must be doors, not metaphorical ones, not spiritual ones, but real, physical places, where the veil between the living and the dead thins, where the earth breathes sulfur, and legends say, do not enter. Every civilization has named them, marked them, feared them, gates to the underworld. And some still stand today, hidden in forests, buried beneath ruins, or carved into stone. Waiting. The idea of gates to hell is older than writing. In ancient Mesopotamia, the goddess Inanna descended into the underworld through 7 gates. Each gate stripped her of a possession, a symbol of power. By the time she reached the bottom, she stood naked and powerless. And then, she died. That story, thousands of years old, isn't just about myth. It reflects a truth humans have always feared, that the path to darkness begins with loss, and that some roads lead downward only. In Turkey, there's a place the ancients called Ploutonion, the Gate of Pluto. Discovered in the ruins of Hierapolis, this cave was worshipped as an entrance to the underworld. Even today, toxic gases seep from the earth inside it. Carbon dioxide levels rise so high that birds drop dead mid-flight. In ancient times, priests would lead animals into the cave, and the animals would die instantly. The priests, however, would walk out unharmed. To the people watching, it was a miracle. But today we know the secret. They held their breath. They knew the gas pooled low to the ground. They knew how to cheat death. A gate to hell explained by science, but no less terrifying. In Greece, the lake called Avernus was believed to be a mouth to the underworld. The Romans built tunnels near it, still visible today. Virgil, in the Aeneid, imagined the hero descending through it to meet the dead. The water there is dark, almost black, the air once heavy with sulfur, and the silence unnatural. Locals avoided the area. They believed it was cursed. They weren't entirely wrong. In Italy, the ancient city of Cumae houses the Cave of the Sibyl, a prophetess who, legend says, guided heroes to the world of the dead. Dark tunnels, carved by unknown hands, echoes that never quite die, walls that seem to breathe when you walk alone. What were these places, really? Religious sites, natural hazards, or something in between? A psychological threshold between what is and what could be. Because that's the thing about gates to hell. They don't always look like fire. Sometimes they look like silence. Sometimes like beauty. In Iceland, there is a volcano called Hekla. Locals have long called it the gateway to hell. During the Middle Ages, travelers swore they saw souls screaming in the smoke. Priests believed it was the mouth of damnation itself. Even today, it remains one of the most active volcanoes in the country. And yet, tourists climb it. They take photos, they smile, because hell, when framed correctly, can become spectacle. Just another attraction. But not all gates are marked by nature. Some are built. In the heart of Jerusalem, under the dome of the rock, lies a chamber known as the Well of Soul. Muslim, Jewish, and Christian traditions all whisper about this place. Some say it's where the spirits of the dead await judgment. Others say it's the point where the soul leaves the body. No flames, no demons. Just a stone chamber under one of the most contested places on earth. And what about modern gates? In Turkmenistan, a massive gas crater burns continuously. Locals call it the door to hell. It has been on fire since 1971. The ground collapsed during a Soviet drilling operation. Engineers set the pit alight to prevent the spread of toxic gases. It has not stopped burning since. A 230-foot wide, man-made scar. And the flames still rise, unstoppable, untamed. There is no myth here, no ancient scripture, just science, accident, and awe. But what all these places share is not just heat or darkness. It's reverence. A primal instinct in humans to mark certain places as other. Places where something is wrong, where time feels different, where the veil is thinner. Even now, in modern cities, there are doors no one wants to open. Abandoned psychiatric hospitals, flooded tunnels, stairways in forests that lead to nowhere. People vanish. People feel watched. Some leave changed. Why? Because gates don't have to lead to hell. Sometimes they are hell. Places where memory collapses, where suffering echoes louder than logic, where the air carries stories that don't die. So here is the third rule of surviving hell. Know the gate when you see it. Not all doors are physical. Some are choices, some are people. Some are thoughts you let in at 3 a.m. And once crossed, some gates don't let you walk back out the same. Every culture has warned us, with story, with symbol, with scars in the land. Because while heaven promises eternity, hell promises proximity. It's close, it's here, it's beneath. And sometimes, it's waiting for you to knock. In the next chapter, we'll go even deeper, beyond myth, beyond geography, into the real-world experiences of those who lived through earthly hells. Wars, prisons, torture chambers, where the flames weren't metaphor, but memory. And somehow, they survived. Not all hells burn underground. Some are built by human hands, walled in by politics, war, fear, or indifference. And the flames, they're not fire. They're trauma, hunger, isolation, screams in the dark that no one answers. This is the hell we created for ourselves. And yet, in the middle of it, some people survived. But how? To understand survival, we must first understand the place where it begins. Despair. In the heart of World War II, the gates of Auschwitz stood as the edge of humanity. A sign hung above them, Arbeit macht frei, work sets you free. But the truth was death. Gas chambers, forced labor, terror as a routine. Primo Levi, an Italian Jewish chemist, was one of the few who made it out. His memoir, If This Is a Man, does not describe demons or devils. It describes hunger so deep it turns a man into an animal. It describes sleep as a miracle, a piece of bread as currency, a memory of kindness as armor. Levi survived not because he was strong, but because he remembered he was still human, even when everything around him tried to say otherwise. That is the first survival tool in hell: memory. In Cambodia, during the rule of the Khmer Rouge, Tuol Sleng was a high school. Turned torture center, over 14,000 people entered. Less than a dozen made it out alive. One of them was Chum May. He was beaten, starved, electrocuted. But he survived by fixing typewriters for the guards, by becoming useful. But even more than that, by focusing on the hope of reunion. He told himself, if I live, I will tell the world what happened here. And he did. He lived, and he speaks, still, because hell can silence you. But if you find your voice again, you become its enemy. Second rule of survival: purpose. In the Soviet Union, under Stalin's regime, millions were sent to Gulag labor camps, frozen Siberian wastelands. Men were worked to death in forests and mines. A wrong word, a glance, a suspicion, and you disappeared. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, a former soldier, was imprisoned for writing private criticism of the government. He survived 8 years of forced labor. In his solitude, he memorized poems. He wrote on scraps of paper and committed them to memory. His body was starving, but his mind still building. He later wrote, "The line separating good and evil passes not through states, nor between classes, but through every human heart." That was his realization. Even in hell, the soul has a choice. Third rule: think beyond the cage. But what about hells without walls? During the Rwandan genocide in 1994, nearly 1 million people were slaughtered in just 100 days. Neighbors turned on neighbors. Children were hacked apart. Entire families vanished. Immaculée Ilibagiza, a young Tutsi woman, hid in a bathroom no larger than a closet. She stayed there for 91 days with 7 other women. She listened as killers passed by the door. She prayed. She begged for her mind to survive what her body could not escape. When she finally emerged, her family was gone. But she walked into the sunlight, and she forgave. Not to forget. But because she refused to let hell chain her forever. That is strength. Not muscle, not fire, but the strength to rebuild. Fourth rule, forgiveness is freedom. In the American South, during the era of slavery, entire generations lived and died in chains. Families torn apart, bodies sold, voices silenced. And yet, songs rose from the fields. Stories survived in secret. Language bent and reformed itself. They crafted codes into quilts, escape routes into hymns, resistance into breath. Hell tried to erase them, but they became legend. Survival passed down through blood. Fifth rule, culture resists. Every earthly hell, whether a war zone, a prison camp, a burning city, or a broken home, has one thing in common. It tries to convince you that this is all there is, that there is no after, no light, no recovery. But that's the biggest lie of all. Because even in the worst places, a single gesture, a smile, a word, a stolen prayer, can split the darkness. Even when everything is taken, a small belief remains that tomorrow might be different. And that's the final rule of survival. Hope is defiance. Hell doesn't end when the flames go out. It lingers in nightmares, in silence, in the echo of screams that no one else hears. Survivors don't just walk out of hell. They carry it, in scars, in broken memories, in silence. But they also carry something else. Proof. Proof that hell can be endured, that it can be spoken, that it can be lived through. And through them, we learn this. You don't survive hell by pretending it isn't real. You survive it by naming it, walking through it, and, when you can, helping someone else find the exit. In the next chapter, we'll explore what hell does to the mind, how it alters perception, emotion, identity. We'll see how trauma changes the brain, and how the path out of psychological torment is harder and deeper than we've ever been told. Some hells are physical. You can point to them on a map, but others live inside us, in the folds of memory, in the corners of thought we avoid, in a silence that's louder than screams. This is the hell of the mind, and it's harder to escape than fire and chains, because you can't walk out of a place that's you. When we talk about trauma, we usually mean events. A war, a death, a betrayal. But trauma doesn't end when the event ends. It lingers, not like a scar, but like a virus. Invisible, persistent, infectious. The brain, designed to keep us alive, rewires itself in hell. It becomes hypervigilant. Every sound becomes a threat. Every silence becomes a warning. Survivors of trauma often say the same thing. I'm not the same. They mean it literally. Because hell changes your biology. The amygdala, the part of your brain responsible for fear, grows more active. It reacts faster, harder. The hippocampus, your memory center, begins to shrink. It stops encoding time correctly. That's why a moment of terror can haunt you for decades, while years of peace disappear in a blur. And the prefrontal cortex, the rational voice in your head, goes quiet. Hell rewires your brain to survive, not to think. It's why someone who escaped abuse might still flinch at soft footsteps. Why a combat veteran jumps at fireworks. Why a voice can feel like a weapon. Because inside the mind, the past isn't past, it's now. That's the nature of psychological damnation. You don't relive hell. You remain inside it. There is a name for this. post-traumatic stress disorder. But PTSD is not just about soldiers or victims of crime. It's about anyone who has been broken and then told to just move on. It's about shattered trust, guilt, shame, the belief that you somehow deserved it, that you're damaged, cursed, or worse, alone. Hell isolates you. It convinces you that no one understands, no one sees, no one could possibly know what you've carried. And that isolation becomes a second prison. But there's something strange, something powerful about the brain. It can adapt. Yes, it can break, but it can also rebuild. The same neural pathways that hold pain can slowly begin to rewire toward healing. This is called neuroplasticity. It means the brain is never finished. It is never static. Even in hell, it is learning. And that gives us a crack of light. Therapists, psychologists, even survivors themselves have found tools. Maps out of the labyrinth. One is narrative. To tell your story fully, honestly, without shame, is to name the demon. And when the demon has a name, it loses power. This is not easy. The mind will resist. It will bury, dissociate, forget. Dissociation is another defense, where the brain detaches from reality to protect itself, a kind of psychic escape hatch. But sometimes it doesn't close, and people spend years feeling unreal, like ghosts in their own lives. That too is hell. But slowly, with guidance, those walls can soften. Other tools, grounding techniques, breath work, EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, psychedelic-assisted therapy, journaling, article. Not all healing happens through words. Some people paint their way out of hell. Some dance, some scream. Some sit in silence until the pain starts talking back in a voice they recognize. And above all else, connection. Trauma isolates, healing reunites. When a survivor tells their story and someone listens, truly listens, the world becomes real again. Time starts to move. The future starts to form. Because hell tells you, this is forever. But psychology tells us it doesn't have to be. Let's be clear. Not everyone makes it out. Some live in internal exile. Others succumb. That's real. But for those who begin the climb, every step is an act of defiance. One breath, one meal, one memory at a time. And sometimes the smallest realization becomes the turning point. It wasn't my fault. Or, I was a child. I did what I had to do to survive. These thoughts seem simple, but they can shatter years of guilt. Because guilt is the rope hell ties around your neck. And letting go of it is like waking up underwater, gasping and realizing you're not dead. You were drowning. And now, maybe, you're swimming again. Survival is not forgetting. It's remembering differently. It's reclaiming your story from the fire and reading it aloud, even when your voice shakes. So here's the next rule of surviving hell. The mind is a battlefield, but it's also a forge. You can come out of hell not just scarred, but tempered. Stronger in the broken places, sharper in clarity, more compassionate because you've known agony. Hell can hollow you, but it can also prepare you to speak, to heal, to help someone else find the path you carved through the dark. In the next chapter, we'll explore how hell isn't always an ending. Sometimes, it's the beginning of transformation. We'll meet people who didn't just survive. They rose. They say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But that's not always true. Sometimes, what doesn't kill you breaks you, hollows you out, leaves you unable to speak, to feel, to trust. But sometimes, what doesn't kill you transforms you. Not because you healed quickly, not because you moved on, but because in the ashes of everything you lost, you found something you never knew you had. A new identity, a new purpose, a new self. This is what it means to be reborn from the flames. Across cultures, the myth of transformation through suffering is ancient. The phoenix dies in fire and rises from its own ashes. The hero descends into the underworld and returns changed. The shaman endures spiritual death before they can guide others. Why do we repeat this story? Because it speaks to something we want to believe. That suffering is not the end. That darkness can purify. That hell is not a grave, but a furnace. In psychology, this is called post-traumatic growth. It doesn't mean the trauma disappears. It doesn't mean the pain was worth it. But it means something unexpected happens after hell. You see life differently. Some people gain deeper relationships. Others find meaning where none existed before. Some feel spiritually awakened. Many report increased empathy, gratitude, clarity. It's not about returning to who you were. It's about becoming someone new. A man named Viktor Frankl knew this better than most. He was a psychiatrist imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps. He lost his parents, his brother, his pregnant wife, everything. But in that darkness, he observed something unusual. Not everyone who suffered lost their will to live. Those who survived longest, he noticed, often had one thing in common: meaning. In his book, Man's Search for Meaning, Frankl writes, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." He didn't romanticize hell, but he believed that even in its deepest chambers, the human spirit could find direction. That realization helped him survive. And when he was freed, he didn't just rebuild. He taught. He turned his ashes into light for others. That's rebirth. Another survivor, Malala Yousafzai, was just 15 when she was shot in the head for speaking out about education for girls in Pakistan. She nearly died, but she didn't stop. She woke up in a hospital in another country, her voice weaker, but her fire stronger. She said, "They thought the bullets would silence us, but they failed." Malala didn't just survive hell. She became a symbol, and that symbol changed the world. This is what hell fears most. Not those who escape, but those who return bearing fire, not to destroy, but to illuminate. Because when you survive the unimaginable, you gain a kind of vision. You can see what others overlook: pain, injustice, silence. And more importantly, you feel called to speak. That's why so many survivors become healers, therapists, writers, activists, artists. They carry the scars. But they've learned to turn them into maps, not out of pity, but out of power. There's a concept in Japanese culture called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken pottery with gold. Instead of hiding the cracks, they're highlighted, made beautiful, honored. The bowl is not ruined. It is more valuable because it was broken. That's what rebirth from hell looks like. Not erasing the pain, but integrating it, owning it. Another example, Nelson Mandela. He spent 27 years in prison, hard labor, isolation, but he emerged, not seeking vengeance. He came out preaching peace. He wrote, "As I walked out the door toward the gate that would lead to my freedom, I knew if I didn't leave my bitterness and hatred behind, I'd still be in prison." He turned hell into fuel and changed the course of history. But you don't have to be famous to be reborn. Some people rebuild after losing a child, others after surviving abuse or addiction or betrayal or illness. They wake up one day and realize, I'm still here. And from that single breath, they start again. Sometimes it takes years, sometimes decades, but the fire that once consumed them now lights the path for someone else. This is your next rule for surviving hell. Use what burned you, not to destroy, but to create, to speak, to listen, to love more deeply, to protect those still trapped. Because there are always others, still wandering, still bleeding. And when you reach back with a steady hand, you become what you once needed. A guide, a witness, a survivor. Hell may mark you, but it doesn't get to define you. In the next chapter, we'll explore spiritual transformation. The moments when descent into darkness becomes the catalyst for awakening. Near-death experiences, mystical visions, and the sacred fire that purifies instead of punishes. Because sometimes the deepest pain leads to the clearest light. Fire destroys, but it also purifies. It consumes lies, illusions, masks, and what it leaves behind, if anything, might be something closer to truth. Not all who enter hell are broken. Some emerge burning with something else entirely: clarity, vision, sacred awareness. This is the paradox of suffering, that the same fire which annihilates the ego can also reveal the soul. Across cultures and centuries, mystics have described descent, not just into pain, but into something holy. Hell as crucible, hell as revelation, hell as awakening. In Christian mysticism, this is known as the dark night of the soul. Coined by St. John of the Cross in the 16th century, it describes a phase of spiritual desolation, a sense of abandonment by God, a falling away of all comfort, all certainty. He wrote, "At night, in secret, when none saw me, nor I beheld aught, without light or guide, save that which burned in my heart." The soul stripped bare, wanders, not to be punished, but to be purified, transformed. In this theology, God is not absent in the darkness. He is the darkness, not as evil, but as mystery, as the place where all illusions die, so that truth can rise. Buddhist teachings echo this in a different form. Before Siddhartha became the Buddha, he wandered, starved, sat beneath a tree and faced every temptation, every fear. It was not a joyful enlightenment, it was a death. And in that symbolic death, he awakened. The fire, again, was not destruction, it was emptying. In indigenous traditions, vision quests often involve isolation, fasting, even symbolic death. The initiate enters the wilderness, not to find answers, but to lose the self that asks the questions. Pain, exhaustion, and fear are not obstacles. They are thresholds. Crossing them means stepping into a world that most never glimpse, a sacred fire that only burns away what is false. The Sufis, mystical Muslims, speak of love that consumes like flame. The poet Rumi wrote, "Try to be a sheet of paper with nothing on it. Be a spot of ground where nothing is growing, where something might be planted, a seed, possibly, from the absolute." That emptiness is not despair. It is preparation. So why do so many spiritual awakenings begin with suffering? Because when the world as you know it falls apart, so do the lies you've told yourself. You are no longer your status, your reputation, your plans. In the fire of suffering, only the essential survives. In that silence, some hear a new voice. People who've had near-death experiences often report something unexpected. Not fear, but peace, a sense of infinite love, of seeing their life as a pattern, not a tragedy. They return changed, less afraid, more connected, more alive, and not because they were rescued, but because, for a moment, they were emptied. Hell, in these accounts, is not punishment. It is revelation, a place that removes all distraction until you see what matters. Sometimes, the sacred is found not in light, but in the deepest dark. There are countless stories of people who lost everything: health, family, identity. And then, in the stillness, found something unexplainable. Not religion, not answers, but presence. A stillness so deep, it became holy. A patient in hospice, weeks from death, writes letters to strangers to tell them they matter. A man paralyzed in an accident becomes a teacher of meditation and inner peace. A woman who escaped cult abuse becomes a guide for others. Because her scars let her speak a language few understand. They don't pretend it was easy, or noble, or justified. They simply say, "I would not wish this path on anyone, but I would not trade what I learned." That's the mark of sacred fire. It doesn't ask for belief, only surrender. You don't worship it, you pass through it. And if you survive, if you are willing to be changed, you may emerge with something more than strength. You may emerge with vision, because hell burns away what is false. And sometimes, that's the only way we learn what's real. The next rule for surviving hell: let it change you. Don't cling to who you were. Don't fight the fire. Let it burn off what no longer serves, what was never truly you. When you stop resisting, you may find that hell wasn't trying to destroy you. It was trying to refine you. And in that refinement, you become more dangerous to darkness than ever before. Because now you walk with fire inside you, not to burn the world, but to light the way. In the final chapter of our journey, we will look ahead, not to escape hell, but to walk through it. Together, we'll explore how to carry what you've learned into the world, how to become a guide, a protector, a survivor who builds bridges for others. Because surviving hell is only the beginning. What comes next is up to you. There is no map out of hell, no sign that reads, "This way to freedom," because the truth is harsh. Most people don't make it out. They survive, yes, but they remain there, trapped in memory, in silence, in fear, walking through life with smoke in their lungs and ashes in their chest. But some do find the way out, not by accident, not by luck, but by choosing every day to walk, slowly, painfully, deliberately. They become the rare ones, not just survivors, guides. If you've come this far through fire, through despair, through transformation, then you know something that others don't. That hell is not a place. It's a process, and so is the way out. There is no one gate, no final boss, no light switch that ends the darkness. The exit is not behind you. It's something you build, step by step, out of broken things. A shattered memory, a kind word, a breath taken when everything told you to give up. And most importantly, the decision to reach back. Because now, you're not just someone who survived, you're someone who knows the way. That's the most terrifying and sacred responsibility of all. To return to the burning rooms you escaped. To enter the darkness voluntarily. Not for yourself, but for someone else. You become the voice they needed, the hand they missed, the proof that survival is possible. But let's be honest, helping others will reopen your wounds. It will remind you of what you lost. It will test the strength you earned. That's the final gate, the last test. Because hell always whispers, "You've done enough. Go live your life. Forget them." But your soul knows better. You don't forget. You transform. You carry the flame differently now. Not to warm yourself, but to light the path. In ancient myths, the hero who returns from the underworld never comes back the same. They carry secrets, symbols, power. But what they really carry is perspective. The awareness that life is fragile, that every moment is borrowed, that kindness is never wasted, that silence can kill, and that one voice, raised at the right moment, can pull someone back from the edge. That voice can be yours. Hell teaches you this one last truth. It was never just about you. The suffering, the healing, the climb. It was never meant to end with you safe and silent on the other side. It was meant to give you the tools to walk back in and become someone's guide out. Maybe your voice is what someone else needs to hear at 3 a.m. Maybe your story becomes someone else's rope. Maybe your pain becomes someone else's map. This is how legacies are born, not through perfection, but through scars, through people who were broken and chose to build something anyway. The exit, then, is not a place. It's a path you create. It winds through truth, forgiveness, action, and above all, connection. You don't need to save everyone. You won't. But if you save even one, if you stand at the edge of someone else's hell and say, I've been there, you've done something sacred. And if no one else has done that for you yet, let this be that moment now. You are not alone. You are not crazy. You are not broken beyond repair. You are walking through fire. But that fire can refine, can harden what must be strong, and melt away what must go. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to do with it. That is the way out. Not escape, integration, not forgetting, understanding, not pretending, but becoming. So this is the final rule. Turn around and reach back, because somewhere, someone is screaming quietly in their own personal hell. And maybe your voice, your presence, your survival is the key that unlocks their door. You've made it through the fire. But the work isn't over. Now it begins. Welcome back.